Strategic business planning here, Elmer Hall, and doing a couple videos. This one's on residential. It's looking at the financial analysis, but there's some subtleties to the financial analysis that are kind of hard to really appreciate until you kind of work through the various nuances of it. Generally, people are happy with being sustainable, and residential, most people do it just because they want to reduce their footprint, but it's a good business investment. It's a good personal investment, so definitely worth spending more time at if you don't already have solar. To repeat, Dr. Elmer Hall, company, a strategic business planning company, and we do the plans that every business needs. We have a specialization in intellectual property and have some books on the perpetual innovation series, but big fondness for sustainability, and we have a website where you'll find this video and more. You'll find a solar calculator. Okay, here we go. Solar investment. Here's the key topics are cost of doing nothing. Solar is a pretty good investment. Even if you pay no taxes, it's a decent investment, maybe 5% return. And with tax breaks, it becomes an even better investment. That tax break has gone down from 30% investment tax credit last year. Now it's down to 26, and it continues to drop off really quickly after this year. The tax credit means that instead of paying taxes on that investment, you pay 26% of the investment is a direct reduction in your taxes. The net investment, therefore, is really only 74%, and its profitability, pretty good profitability, 7 to 11%, far better than that once you start to consider some of the nuances of it. Your property value increases, so that's not all bad. So pretty much it will increase to the value of your investment or more. And then, of course, there's all the good things about doing good for the environment. Okay, so back to the basic pricing. What's the cost of doing nothing? This is the one that's a subtle and nuanced that's hard to really put your finger on. If you have a building, it is only useful if it's being used, and if it's being used, then it's got utility costs. So once you include the utility costs, those are pretty much fixed costs. You can't reduce them. You can reduce them a little, but you can't get rid of them completely. So for example, if you had a 3% increase in tax in your utility costs, then over 10 years, the $35,000 residential system we're talking about, then the amount that you would have paid for your power, I'm looking down at the bottom, of 10 years, it would be maybe $27,000. Over 30 years, it would be more than $100,000 if the utility raised its rates. Well, utilities in the U.S. have historically raised them about 3%. Florida maybe quite a bit more than that. These inflation rates are lower now, probably, but there's no reason why they won't go up for various reasons. Anyway, you pay the power company money, and as long as the building's in use, then you should expect to pay the power company more money. Literally $100,000 or more over 30 years. And the other alternative is you could produce your own power and save money. So the general investment of say a $35,000 system, in which case you would have $9,100 in federal tax credit. That's the tax credit. So instead of paying $9,100 on your taxes, you literally reduce it. If you're in a luxurious situation where you don't pay that much taxes, then it would just roll over and you wouldn't pay taxes the next year, or you pay lower taxes the next year. That really is only a $25,900 for the system that would have cost you $35,000. The nice thing about that is it would have been a good investment prior to this tax credit, but this tends to make it really a quite good one. Here's another look at the profitability. Maybe 7 to 8% return on investment. If you didn't pay any taxes, let's say at church, then the return would still be decent. It would be 5% return, for example, which is good given the safety of the investment. But given the tax-free nature of it, if you had 25% tax rate, this would be your marginal tax rate, not your effective tax rate, what you pay on the next dollar. Then you would be making maybe 10 to 11% return on your investment. Pretty cool. And you can pay for it with the money you would have spent already on to the power company. There's some cool financing because it's so profitable and it's so safe. There's some really cool ways to get loans, mortgage added to a mortgage if you're buying a house, or to the home equity line of credit if you already have one. So you can get it at pretty low rates and have the savings from what you would have paid to the power company more than pay off the whole system. Here's a quick look at the payback. In this particular case, the savings is about $2,300 per year, and that would result in a tax-free return each and every year of about 8.8% on the net investment, which is just 74% of the investment. That, if you're in 25% tax bracket, calculates out to an effective rate of 11%. Internal rate of return is 8%, if that's anything you want to hear about. Payback is 10 years. That's pretty good for this type of investment. This is not a short-term investment. This is more of a long-term investment, and that's pretty good. The system will easily last 30, even 40 years. And so then you look at the net present value. Net present value is $17,000 if you had a loan of 3.5% inflation and 1.5% in terms of your utility. So look what happens. In the 20th year, because power rates have been going up, your loan is less than what you would have been paying by $1,100 a year. However, the next year, if you had a 20-year loan, most people would do it for less than that, 10 or 15, but if you had a 20-year loan on the solar system, the next year you would actually be making almost $3,000 a year in savings. Very cool. And to look at the summary of the analysis, I'll leave this up for a second so you can see this, but there's two key points here. Not all solar systems are created equal. Look at the depletion rate and look very closely at the warranty. The warranty, you want to have at least 25 years. You know, you want to make sure that you've definitely got your investment back, and you wanted to include, if possible, and consider it having to pay for the materials and the labor to get it replaced if there was any issue. Typically not an issue from everything that I've read and seen. Depletion rate is critical. That's how much these solar panels are guaranteed not to deplete per year. This particular system is SunPower. There's a couple others really good ones out there, but this one here is SunPower, which has a very, very low depletion rate, which means that in 30 years it still should be producing more than 90% of its original power. And then here's a summary of the system in the middle, which is in Florida at about 14 cents a kilowatt hour. The system in this particular case is about $3 a watt, which you would expect to be pretty common in the math process. $3 or less per watt is a decent price, and it's profitable at that point. But once you get the tax savings, then it comes down to more like $2 a watt, which of course makes it just makes it a good investment. Here's an idea of how it could be paid for. Cumulative cash flows. The cumulative cash flows might look like this, where you get a loan and pay only interest for the first part of the loan. So you see that big spike in the left-hand side. You pay only interest for 2 years. In this particular case, for 2 years is a 20-year mortgage. It's longer than you would probably get. But if you rolled it into a mortgage, then it would not be a problem to do it this way. But notice that it's just interest for 2 years. During that time, a year or 2 years, then you've gotten your tax credit. If you took that tax credit, in this case the 9,100, when you took that and applied it directly to the loan, then what you'd have is when you started to pay the regular loan payment, a fixed amount, it would be much less than what you would have paid to the power company. So very cool. Your cash flow is net positive every month from the time you started all the way through. And then notice in the 21st month, then you've totally paid off the loan or the mortgage, and now you're in pure profit of huge amounts for the remaining life of that solar system. A very, very cool, very cool situation. One cool thing to think about is that the top of those bars is what you were already paying. So your cash flow, your free cash flow, your disposable income will be better absolutely every month from the time you get a solar system. You can do it a little different. If you did it really short, 10 years for example, there may be a couple months that you might be cash negative, but and one more quick thing on this is many states also have a tax credit as well. Florida does not. Okay, so here's what the investment looks like if you want to look at it a different way. The red bar to begin with at day zero, at month zero, is the entire investment. And then you start to see it really pop up where you get the tax credit coming back on board, and then it continues to go up. Over the life of this 30-year graph, you end up making a total above and beyond the cost of the investment of $60,000. And that's not present value terms, but still it gives you a good look at what you spent, what have we said, 20-some thousand dollars on this investment, $26,000 in this investment, and you end up getting a total of not only that back, but an extra $60,000. Okay, so you decide that you want to sell. You're not going to keep the building, you want to sell it. Well, you should expect the value of the property to appreciate. Appreciation is just where the value of the property has gone up. And it makes sense because if you think about it, you have a solar production system that you've added to the asset of the house, and it's producing a value of the entire utilities, in this case of about $2,300 every year. So someone who buys this property would then have that savings. I mean, literally, they could apply an extra $2,000 to their mortgage every year instead of paying it to the power company. So it shows up really quite well, and it's starting to do much better. It wasn't showing up as well in the value of houses, but it does seem to be really starting to show up more and more cleanly and more clearly. It's showing up well in the MLS as well. There's a study that came out with, depending on where you were, you could end up with 20 times the annual savings as the increased value to the property. In the example we're working on, that additional 2,300 savings for 20 years really would be a property appreciation of almost $46,000. You're only paying net about $26,000 for the system. So it's almost a $20,000 saving, essentially the day in which you get the system and get it launched. So it's not a bad idea. Now, you may not end up with this many savings, but a lot of times people say, well, what if I sell it? There are issues if you do, there's some encumbrances if you lease, but generally if you do own the property, then the mortgage would get paid off if you had it as a loan. If you paid it off, then it's clean. But if you had gotten a loan or rolled it into a HELOC or something, all those things would be paid off when you make the transaction to sell the property. So it's a nice it's a nice addition to the value of your home, and really one of those things that you do when you're fixing up your castle for all those stay-at-home times to work or to enjoy. Quick couple things though, let's move to the green aspect of it. Power companies use huge amounts of water. And if you're getting your power from natural gas, coal, nuclear, they use a spectacular amount of water. In fact, 41% of the water used in the United States goes to power plants. And of course, then there's all of the other savings associated with it. Environmental savings, there's a nexus of power and water because you use huge amounts of water. Hydro uses lots of water. Coal uses massive amounts of water. Natural gas uses a lot of water. Nuclear uses massive amounts of water. And then, of course, most of that water is not used as evaporated. It's just heated and then returned. All that heat, probably 40% as a rule of thumb, 40% of the heat used to turn turbines is just wasted. It's not even used from your favorite coal, nat gas, and oil power plants. And so as you look at this solar system, it's a perpetuity of savings of water. Of course, it's a perpetuity of savings of all of the greenhouse gases associated with use of fossil fuels. It helps reduce the problems with the strain on the rivers, the streams, and ecosystems. Basically, kind of cool. Here's, for this particular system, what the numbers would look like, but the savings would be 12 tons per year of carbon dioxide, metric tons, the equivalent of taking almost 3 cars off the road each year, and basically the equivalent of 1,400 gallons of gasoline per year. Each of these are equivalent, not combined, but still you get the 13,000 equivalent of 13,500 pounds of coal burn per year is what you and your house have saved. Really a good solution to help to be a lower carbon footprint. And so, in summary, being green while making green, you're making money, is a great way to do it. It's a great investment, especially with the tax credits. Environmental savings are pretty huge, and that's not counting, in our case, we haven't even considered the cost of carbon dioxide, which you should expect to see some type of taxes in some form, just to start to ease down the use of fossil fuels. It would be surprising if we don't catch up with the rest of the world in that respect. And then, of course, there's all the water use. But businesses have been pushing for more sustainable partners, and that would something you might do as well. Employees like greener companies, customers like greener businesses, and you can do well by doing good and help on the home front to start with. This has been Elmer Hall from Strategic Business Planning Company, and I wish you the best with your fun in the sun.